everybody. So I'm excited to do this video for you, and I've been talking about doing it for quite a long time, so today is the day. Currently I am, what day are we on? Friday, so 21 weeks and 3 days pregnant. This pregnancy is flying by. So I think I'm going to keep this separate from my pregnancy vlog, so just in case anybody specifically wants to know about why I want to be back, they can watch this instead of having to skip over a bunch of pregnancy stuff, pregnancy vlog update stuff. Alright, so I'm going to be sharing my specific experience with C-sections. I'm not sure what that was if you heard it. But anyways, everybody's experience with their birth is unique, and please do not take this as me bashing the need for a C-section or women who have a C-section. Like, if my recovery had have gone better than what it did, then maybe I wouldn't be so determined to have a VBAC. If maybe my recovery went like everyone else, I feel, I wouldn't be so determined. But my recovery didn't, and this is why I'm so against having a second C-section, unless of course there is a life or death situation. Then by all means do whatever you have to do, because the baby is more important. I'm also going to be discussing the struggle to make a decision, because of course there are risks to both a VBAC and a secondary C-section. And it's not just with secondary C-sections, it's with like third and fourth, and depending on how many kids you want to have, of course. So the main reason why I want a VBAC is because of my experience with my recovery. The surgery itself, it couldn't have gone any better. Like, I had the best C-section surgery ever. Like, I was not scared to have a C-section. I walked down the hall. Like, I don't know, everybody that I've talked to have been a little nervous and scared to have surgery. Obviously, it's major surgery, and there's nothing wrong with being scared or afraid. Me, at this point, I just I wanted it over. I was like, when the discussion of a C-section came up, I'm like, yep, let's go. I didn't care. Looking back, I wish I had been a little bit more determined to have a vaginal delivery. Maybe I could have. I'm not really sure, because the option was no longer there anymore, and well, maybe it would have been if I would have been like, no, this is how we're gonna do it. We're not doing a C-section. But anyways, hindsight is always 20/20. So the surgery itself went perfect. I never had any problems until about, I want to say about 12 hours later, because my surgery, I had the spinal block, so I was really numb. I know the clients that I have dealt with, for those of you who don't know, I'm a doula, so I've attended many births and a few C-section births, and for those people who've had an epidural, they find that it's not that you can feel it, but you're not as numb, so you might feel more than what you think you're going to. I'm not sure. But with the spinal, I had no feeling. Even when they were like digging around inside of me to get her out, I wasn't bothered by it, you know what I mean? Like, I was the perfect amount of numbness to where I'm not even getting a hint of a cutting or a stitching, or like, it was all good for me. And if I have to have another C-section, I'm hoping that I can get the spinal and not the epidural. But anyways, the problem started when I noticed how weak and tired I was, and I figured that maybe it was because I labored for 26 hours with no pain medication. I can't really say no pain medication, no big time pain medication, like no epidural, no fentanyl, nothing like that. I did have morphine, which, holy crap, Never going to do that again. My body cannot handle narcotics, I've learned, except for Tylenol 3. Anything else is completely out of the question for me because I'm just too sensitive to it unless it's like a ridiculously low dose, like a milligram. I probably could handle a milligram of Dilaudid because I did take that after my section because I was stupid and not wanting any pain pills because I still had the medication that they put in the spinal. Don't do that. Take your pain medication. Always take your pain medication. Don't refuse it. So I had to take quite an increase in the Dilaudid that they gave me. Not doing that again either. So, but I was really tired and I thought that maybe it was because it was a labor. Then the doctor came in and he's like, well, here's what we're looking at. I think we're going to have to give you a blood transfusion because you actually lost a lot of blood in surgery. I didn't know that. That was a concern of mine, and I actually asked as I was being stitched back up and the baby was out, how's my bleeding? And I'm so thankful the doctor lied to me. Like, so thankful. Because I probably would have had an SVT episode and things would have went to hell in a handbasket right there. So she said, it looks great. It's under control. Not to worry. No, it was very far from being under control, and we were worrying at that point, but I'm thankful that she didn't tell me. Luckily for me, I was able to make the decision whether I wanted to transfuse or I could take my iron pills. My hemoglobin was down to a 71, I think, at that point. And if it was any lower, they definitely would have transfused me. It wouldn't have been up to me. But because I'm a strange person and have a fear of these medical procedures, I don't know really how to explain that phobia. Like, I'm terrified of an MRI. I'm terrified of the dye and a CAT scan just because I'm scared I'm going to have allergic reactions and die. I don't know. Am I scared of a C-section? No. Am I scared of a blood transfusion? Yeah, I'm terrified. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. But I didn't want to take the blood transfusion. Looking back, I think I would do that again if I needed to. Instead of just taking the iron pills, I would do both things. Because it actually took me a full year to recover from my C-section. Also, I noticed when I left the hospital, I thought that I would be bleeding a heck of a lot more. I was more or less spotting. And they told me that you will be doing too much when you start to bleed heavily again. And I mean, when I went home, I wasn't doing, too awful much. I did a load of laundry and I got scolded at, so I never did anything else. I just looked after me and the baby, and I had help with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the first 3-4 weeks of Ellie's life, just because of how weak and tired I was. I was like really in survival mode, and I don't think that I could have looked after Ellie on my own. I really believe to this day that I don't think I could have done it without my mom. At 22 days, I want to say, postpartum. No, sorry, 13 days postpartum. Being a first-time mom, I was bleeding quite heavily, soaking through a fair amount of pads. Not a pad an hour, but, it was enough to, man, I wasn't bleeding like this a few days ago, and now I'm like, this is like a heavy period type, and they say that if it picks up like that, you may need to go in to get looked at. So I went into the ER 13 days postpartum just to get looked at. They tried to stick the speculum inside of me, and even though I did not have vaginal delivery, just being in that position, I'm still hardly moving around at this point. I'm hobbling. And I think that's the first time I've been out of the house since I came home. I just couldn't do it. So they couldn't examine my cervix at that point. He told me, it was a resident, by the way. And nothing against residents. I'm just not a resident girl. He consulted with one of the doctors, and the doctor did not even look at me. Just they were consulting through the telephone and saying, well, yeah, I think it's fine. She's just a first-time mom, and she's concerned, and this is she was doing too much. Wasn't doing anything but sleeping pretty much. So, anyways, 22 days postpartum, I was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. The most excruciating pain in my entire life. I would rather have 10 C-sections than go through what I did at 22 days postpartum, and I'm not kidding. Not an exaggeration. I never want to experience what I experienced then. One, because of the pain, and two, I thought I was going to die because I was hemorrhaging. They couldn't get it under control, and I would be passing out because I was in so much pain. Like, I would go unconscious. It was horrible, and I have to sneeze. It was a horrible experience. I never want to go through, like, something like that again. My husband was just completely beside himself because he's sitting there with a 22-day-old baby. I uploaded a video on YouTube about that when I'm coming out of surgery. I needed emergency surgery. So this is like super late at night, 22 days postpartum. In the morning of 23 days postpartum, they gave me a CAT scan with the dye to figure out where all this bleeding was coming from. I was having pain from my incision area all the way up to my chest. I even thought at some point that I was having a heart attack when I was awake. Like, when I was awake, I was screaming. I'm pretty sure they thought that maybe I belonged on the psych ward because of my carrying on and how bad I was screaming. I'm pretty sure the whole emergency department heard me, but I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I was in that much pain. I was just screaming over and over and over again, help me, somebody help me, just put me out of my misery. And no, that's not for me. So they did the CAT scan, found out that I was full of blood for some reason. So the doctor comes in with that resident that I seen at 13 days postpartum. And the resident tells me, he's like, you need some surgery and we're going to take you right now. It was like, as soon as they found out the results of my CAT scan, I could hear them out at the desk talking about it, and with like 30 seconds to a minute later, they came in and they're like, here, sign this, sign this, sign this. These are the risks, blah, 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 blah. And they went so fast, and I'm so loopy from all of the crap that they're giving me from the pain medication. I had like IVs, and anyways, they did a DNC. They were talking about going back in through my incision area for my C-section. I'm like, hell no. No. You do the DNC. I never wanted the DNC, but it's something that I need to have. Meanwhile, they're checking my hemoglobin level at this point because I'm losing so much blood. And it's rapidly coming down, and they're talking about transfusing me. And again, with that phobia, I'm like, no, 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 I'll just take the iron pills. If I could go back and do that over, I would. I'd definitely take the transfusion because I lost so much blood. So anyways, they do the surgery. It's a DNC, right? So I should be up and out of the hospital in 2-3 hours. Nope! I'm in the hospital like over 24 hours and in so much pain. When I made that video, you could see I'm white as a freaking sheet. I look like death run over. I'm still in so much pain. I'm like begging them to knock me unconscious. Just give me something. I think the best part of that whole experience was when they gave me the propofol or whatever you call it, the milk of amnesia, or, well, the thing Michael Jackson died of. When they gave that to me, I was so happy to go to sleep for a little while. And I was terrified when it was time to wake up again because of the amount of pain that I was in. So, anyways, it being summertime, everybody and their dog is having a baby, and the labor ward is so busy, and the doctor is supposed to come in and check on me and release me and do all this stuff, so they get a resident to come up. I'm like, look, I have to go. Like, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon here the next day. And so we're now on 24 days postpartum. And I'm really wanting to go see my baby because I haven't seen her. So Ellie was being formula fed at that point because the breastfeeding wasn't happening. So I needed to go to Walmart and get her some formula, and Matthew didn't know what kind, and my mom didn't know what kind, and for some reason they didn't understand the description of the box, so I had to go. And I'm walking around Walmart wearing 2 maxi pads lined back to back. Actually, I think it might have been 3. We'll just say 2 because I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure it was at least 2. In that time frame, in 45 minutes, I flooded both of those maxi pads and it was coming down my leg at that point. So I go back into the ER. They check my hemoglobin, hook me up to an IV, and they're like, well, you might need another surgery because the first one might not have worked and we might have to go through your C-section incision. Oh, shit. Fucking shoot me at this point. So the doctor from upstairs, the labor and delivery ward, comes down and she's like, I think you have a uterine infection. Because they don't have the pathology report back yet, so they don't know why I had all the bleeding. They need to send whatever they found in me to pathology. She's like, I don't think you have a uterine, or she's like, I think you have a uterine infection, but you're not showing all the classic symptoms of a uterine infection, like fever and smelly discharge and all. Like, I'm just bleeding like a stuffed pig at this point. So, she gives me these, oh, and I have a bladder infection because of the catheter that they used on me. So I'm taking the Macrobid for my bladder infection and then some other ungodly freaking giant horse pill for this uterine infection that makes you really sick when you take it. So throwing up while having a C-section incision healing that's just so much fun. Anyways, they found out the results of what was inside of me. I had freaking retained placenta. I know it's possible. I know no C-section is perfect. I know, no surgeon is perfect, and I have nothing against my surgeon and the OB who delivered my daughter. In fact, she's my first choice to have as an OB again. So no hard feelings. Understand nobody's perfect. But I was not expecting to hear that I have retained placenta because they have you wide open. The risk of having retained placenta is higher in a vaginal delivery because they can't see inside of your uterus to make sure it all came in. Plus, I had my placenta saved, so she looked at it, and I'm pretty sure that, she thought that it was all there. Nope, just a little tiny bit left. Like, it wasn't huge amounts or anything, but it was a little bit left. So I'm going in for blood work and doing all this. Long story short, bleeding is still there, not dying down. And then I get the call that, well, if it doesn't go away, we're going to have to give you a hysterectomy. Are you kidding me? I just dealt with 7 years of infertility, and now I'm facing a hysterectomy. Are you kidding me? Luckily, obviously, I didn't have a hysterectomy. This is why I never want to have another C-section in my life, not unless it's a life or death situation. So that's my number 1 reason for a VBAC. So let's talk about risks. And I know this is a long video, and I'm super sorry, but, going in detail and stuff. There are risks for both, as I said. A VBAC is safer for the mother, and a repeat C-section is safer for the baby. However, the risks of something going horribly wrong in a VBAC, where the baby's life is put at risk, is 0.5/1%. So 1% chance of everything going horribly wrong, and by horribly wrong, I mean a uterine rupture. And there's various degrees of a uterine rupture. There's ones where your uterus starts to perforate. You know what I mean? Like those coupons you can rip out. It starts to perforate. There's ones where it's a slight tear, and ones where it's like catastrophic. Your uterus explodes and your baby's life is hanging in the balance, and you only have like minutes to get the baby out. That's what I'm talking about. 6% of uterine ruptures are catastrophic, and that's when the baby's life hangs in the balance. So 1% of it actually happening, but 6% of all uterine ruptures are catastrophic. So just because my uterus ruptures doesn't mean that that means you have to have a C-section, obviously, but it doesn't mean that the baby's going to die the baby could die if you don't get him or her out right away, but it's not like, holy crap, her uterus exploded. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's still something to think about. Uterine rupture is scary. Doesn't matter if it's a perforated uterus or the whole thing just erupts. It's scary as shit because your baby could die, and that's a fact. C-section, I could bleed to death. They could nick my placenta. They could nick the baby, obviously. I could have blood pressure issues. I could have unstable heart rate, and I could die. And the baby could die as well if they don't get the baby out fast enough. So the chances of something like that happening in the OR, not like the super catastrophic stuff, but like the blood pressure issues and the bleeding issues. Bleeding issues, we already know I had that. That is more likely to happen than anything bad happening in a VBAC. So, really, the risks for a VBAC, it's something that I'm more comfortable with than the risks of a repeat C-section. Not to mention, I really don't know where I stand if we want more kids. So the more C-sections that you have, the more problems that you could have with your pregnancy. You could have something really serious called placenta increta or accreta. It could be like placenta previa, where your placenta covers your cervix, and you don't necessarily have to have repeat C-section for all that, but you could have something where the placenta attaches to your scar, and you run the risk of bleeding to death if they nick that, or they might have to cut you this way instead of this way, and I could not imagine healing from this way. God bless all the mothers who have had that type of surgery. I can imagine it would be absolute hell to recover from surgery like that. You could have, I think it's increta, where the placenta actually buries deep inside and actually comes out of the uterine wall and can attach onto your bladder or bowel, and that's a really life-threatening situation for you and your baby. And I know a few stories going around where both mother and baby have died from that. And the more you do this surgery, the more likely that is to happen. I mean, with secondary C-sections, you're looking at if they can't get the bleeding under control, you're looking at hysterectomies, especially third, fourth, fifth C-sections. Those are real, those are real problems. If somebody wants to have a C-section and that's what they're comfortable with, that's something that you need to discuss with your doctor. I am no place to judge. It's a really big decision to have a second C-section or a VBAC. It doesn't matter what my opinion is. It automatically goes on what you're comfortable with. Nobody can make the decision for you. A lot of people might not be comfortable with the idea that their uterus could rupture, even though that it's super rare. It's something that can happen, and it's what you have to live with at the end of the day. If your uterus ruptures, and God forbid something happen, could you live with that? Or if you were in a C-section and you had a hysterectomy, or you bleeding to death, or, something like that, how would your family feel about that? And speaking of which, somebody asked me how my family feels about that. I was going through something where I was feeling guilty for making a decision that could potentially endanger my baby's life. Like I said, it's rare, and I want to say, insist that it is rare, but it still could happen. And I was feeling guilty about that decision, and then I was feeling guilty about making a decision about having a repeat C-section, knowing that I could leave Ellie without a mother, or have serious complications, or the baby could die anyways, you know what I mean? And I asked my mom, I said, knowing what I told you, knowing all the risks and all this stuff, what would you choose? And she agrees. VBAC all the way. There's less risks of complications for me, for baby, and for future pregnancies. And I asked Matthew, and he's so on board because he's seen what I had to go through when I recovered from having Ellie. So I'm just really, really determined on, obviously, if the baby's breech and we can't get baby turned, or if there's some reason we need a C-section. I'm just hoping the recovery is better, and I'm doing everything possible. I'm preparing for a C-section in the way of, like, I ordered the Halo Swivel Sleeper Bassinet, bringing my bed downstairs because you can't do stairs after you have a C-section, preparing with freezer meals, preparing for childcare. I'm just preparing for all of that stuff. And if none of that happens, then perfect. And if it does, then I'm prepared and I'm going to have a better recovery. I've started taking iron pills to boost my hemoglobin up. So if I have a really scary bleeding episode, that I have, you know, extra reserves. And by all means, I'm definitely not refusing my pain meds or a blood transfusion. So I hope this answers all of your questions, and I really hope that nobody thinks that I'm judgmental because you're more comfortable having a C-section, like third or fourth, whatever. You know, some people, like, there was a woman in my room with me when I had Ellie who had her sixth C-section. No problems, no complications. Like, that's freaking amazing. And no judgment. If that's what you're comfortable with, seriously, it's none of my business. I'm just sharing what I'm comfortable with and why I'm making the decision. And I'm really hoping I'm not guilting anybody one way or the other, because it's something that you need to talk to your doctor about. You need to know the risks of both things involved. And the main thing that I want to stress is, if you're considering a VBAC and the doctor's just sitting there telling you all about the risks of a VBAC and blah, 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 make sure you know the risks of a second C-section too. Make sure that they're equally describing the risks of both, because, like, there's risks to everything, right? So you want to know the risks to everything. One may be better than the other for you. The VBAC is better for me. A C-section might be better for somebody else, and that's okay. All right, so thank you for sticking with me through this long-ass video, and I will do a pregnancy update here soon. Okay, bye guys.